At this point, it might be clear that I'm completely obsessed with Natlan. I mean, I even named my settlement in No Man's Sky as Natlan, and I have a nice little message in case someone ended up on my planet. Natlan is clearly the biggest secret of Genshin Impact. It may even be more secret than the actual endgame, but why? Well, today's video is all about trying to come up with an answer for that question. I've already made a video about Natlan a few months ago, but lately, specifically after Liben didn't tell us anything at all about Natlan, my brain started spinning around like a maniac, and I ended up with a few more theories I'd like to present to you. As always, this is a theory video. I use information available in the game, but my theories and conclusions are not to be considered the official lore of the game unless I got something right and it's confirmed in a later update of the game itself. So, as you can see from the title, the main question we will try to figure out in this video is: where are the people of Natlan? As you might have noticed, we met a lot of foreigners in the 5 nations we've visited so far. Lots of academia researchers are basically everywhere, and the Fontanians are almost just as many. We met people from Mondstadt and Liyue in other nations, and the same goes for people from Inazuma, even despite the Sakoku decree. We also met a ton of people from Snezhnaya, like Fatui operatives, but also merchants and regular people as well. We even met quite a few Kanrians, but if there's one certainty into that, is that there is no one from Natlan anywhere. Well, except for Bennett, but he really doesn't count since it was brought back to Mondstadt as an infant. So what could be the reason why they are not leaving their nation? To find an answer to this major question, we need to figure out what may be happening in Natlan, so what do we know so far? For starters, we know that the original Pyro Archon, Murata, died, and considering what happened to the other 4 original gods, she probably died in Kanria. We know that Natlan is the land of dragons that adapted to humanity and now live as their companions, as Nevelet told us and as we read from the talking stick description. We also know that the people from other nations, like Monglan and maybe even Sijuin, go to Natlan on vacation, so it sounds like a tourist spot, probably because of the natural hot springs. And finally, we also know that there is a major tournament going on and even Capitano has thrown himself into the ring. That's basically all we know. We literally know more about Kanria, a nation that doesn't even exist anymore. Now let's analyze these pieces of information carefully, starting with the Pyro Archon. As I said in my previous video about Natlan, I think her character is going to be based on the Aztec god of war, Huitzilopochtli, and not just because he is the god of war just like her. Huitzilopochtli is also the 5th sun, the 5th god to sacrifice himself into a bonfire to become a sun, after the 4 previous gods that did the same failed miserably, causing the war to be destroyed 4 times as a consequence. I have a whole video about this and how it relates to the Samsara cycles, so if you want to learn exactly what the 5th world means, go check that video out, it's really interesting. Anyway, what's important in this case is that when he became the sun, his brothers, the stars, and his sister, the goddess of the moon, Koyo Shauki, got jealous and decided to defeat him. From that moment on, the sun started this endless fight against the moon and the stars, constantly chasing after each other, causing the day and night cycle. In order to give Huitzilopochtli nourishment to keep this fight going and prevent the war from ending as a consequence, the Aztecs used to sacrifice people to Huitzilopochtli in a very brutal way, and I'm definitely not gonna talk about how they did that. If you're curious, Google it, but I wouldn't recommend it. Anyway, another very important aspect of Huitzilopochtli are the hummingbirds. Not only was Huitzilopochtli born from a ball of hummingbirds' feathers, and the Huitzin in his name means hummingbird, the warriors who died in battle or that were sacrificed to him first became the part of the sun's brilliant retinue, and then after 4 years, they were reincarnated to live forever in the bodies of hummingbirds. Now, I think that these Aztecs myths and ancient rites have been adapted into Genshin Impact with Natlan's tournament. We've known since the manga that the tribes in Natlan would perform rites of combat and celebrate victories in Murata's name. There's a sailor from Fontaine, Lectoure, who said that in Natlan there are different tribes and each has their own rules. The talking stick, on the other hand, tells us that there are 6 tribes and that their leaders used to bicker endlessly. Then there's the Agnides Agate gemstone that talks about a battle to earn a name, which is most likely going to be the tournament. And lastly, Nevelet said that Capitano has thrown himself into the endless ring of war, so he joined the tournament. This tournament does sound like something extremely important to the people of Natlan, so what could it be for? First of all, let's start with the fact that death, especially for an Archon, is not exactly an obstacle. We've seen how Makoto and Rukadevata were able to hold on as consciousnesses for 500 years until they reached their goals, so something similar may be happening in Natlan as well. If Murata's dead but still alive, it may very well mean that maybe she is still ruling over Natlan somehow, and the hint may be found once again in the Agnidas Agate gemstone, specifically when it says a pilgrimage for a wish. She may be kept in a specific place, like a temple or a pyramid, or actually, if you wanna be historically accurate, a temple on top of a pyramid, like Huitzilopochtli's temple in Tenochtitlan, the capital city of the Aztecs. Now, some of you may have already guessed where I'm going with this theory. The tournament may be what's giving Murata enough power to sustain her consciousness. It would be something along the line of what we just experienced in Fontaine. There, the people's belief in justice was gathered and stored by the Oratrice, while in Natlan, the people's belief in war, so the people's will to fight or the actual fights, is producing energy to keep Murata alive. What I'm trying to say is that these fights are the Peggy 12 version of the Aztecs' sacrifices. Now, as I said before, the dead Archons so far held on until their goals had been achieved, so the same should apply to Murata as well. She must have a goal, but it's probably not just keeping her consciousness alive forever. So what could it be? Well, my best bet is that the winner of the tournament will become the new Pyro Archon, and by that I actually mean that the original Pyro Archon will be resurrected into the winner's body, because I mean the Archon quest here is called Incandescent Ode of Resurrection. This would also mean that what the Agnidas Agate gemstone means by a battle to earn a name is that the winner will either inherit the name Murata or the title Pyro Archon, although I personally think it's both. This will also mean that this tournament has been going on for about 500 years, which would explain why Novelette called it the Endless Ring of War. There is a problem with this theory though: Ganyu. She said back during the Archon quest in Liyue that except for Morax and Barbados, the other 5 Archons are not the same friends from 2000 years ago, and of the 7, the youngest is the Dendro Archon, which means that the 5 Archons who died had already been substituted, so there would already be a new Pyro Archon in Natlan. I have 2 potential theories about this. The first theory could be that there has been a winner every 100 years and Murata resurrected herself into these strong warriors, or these warriors sacrificed themselves to let Murata try to resurrect herself, but because they weren't the perfect vessels for her resurrection, they didn't achieve immortality, so she kept looking for the right one, reason why the tournament has been going on for 500 years. In this case, there would have been 4 failed resurrections so far, but this year's winner will be the one, making it the 5th and final resurrection. And as I said before, in the Aztecs mythology, Huitzilopochtli is the 5th sun, while the other 4 sun gods before him failed, so it could make sense mythologically speaking. I mean, just because the other nations have had 2 Archons at most in total, doesn't mean that Natlan has to be the same. It's not a rule or a law of Tvat. The only 2 problems with this theory are that a nation with 4 new Archons after the original one's death wouldn't be something no one would talk about, and if every Archon substitute lasted just 100 years, then Nahida wouldn't be the youngest Archon at only 500 years old anymore, like Ganyu said back in Liyue. But, as I said in my 4.4 analysis video, the Archons never gathered after the Cataclysm like they used to in the past, nor has Ganyu ever left Liyue, nor has Ganyu even recognized Zhongli as Rex Lapis, despite the fact that he is wearing the clothes that Menogias tailored for him specifically, so she may not know what has been going on in Natlan, and as a consequence, her statements can be taken as the absolute truth. Plus, there is a chance that the people of Natlan may be treating this as a national secret, since resurrecting a dead person would be a heresy, let alone resurrecting an Archon, and the 4 resurrections may have all taken the same appearance, so they could have hidden the truth by saying that there has been only 1 substitute since the Cataclysm, while there have been 4 in reality. But what about Zhongli's character story 5, you might ask? Well, he says that many of the 7's titles changed hands, and this one is easy since we know that 5 out of 7 Archons died and were substituted, and that the 7 seats changed and again were changed till 5 of the 7 at the table were all departed. There are two possible interpretations here. The one many would think about is that some nations have seen multiple new Archons, and considering that Inazuma, Sumeru and Fontaine only had 2 Archons in total since the Archon War, and Snezhnaya too seems to have had only the original Cryo Archon and the Tsaritsa, who was already around before the Cataclysm, that would leave Natlan as the only nation with multiple substitutes, which means that my theory of the 4 Archons in Natlan could make sense. Of course, I'm ignoring the fact that Zhongli should think that there are 3 original Archons, since Nahida is now believed to be the only Dendro Archon in the history of Sumeru, and I don't think they missed that. It's probably intentional, but we would have to talk about it in another video entirely. The other possibility is that Zhongli simply meant that the Archons were substituted one after the other, so not at the same exact time. I mean, we know that Rukkhadevata, who died in the Cataclysm, took her time to transform Egeria into the Harvest Token, and then she created Nahida. But we also know that it took some time before Fossilor ascended to Archonhood, since she spent so much time at the bottom of the lake to formulate her plan that barnacles were appearing on her body. So the 5 original Archons were not immediately substituted, and not even at the same time. Also, I would think that Celestia was kinda busy with the consequences of the Cataclysm for a little bit, so they probably didn't have the time to look for substitute Archons as soon as an original one died. So back to Zhongli, this could mean that what he saw was 1 Archon being substituted, and again another substitution after that, until all 5 seats had been given to new gods. Back to Ganyu's statements, the second possibility for what's happening in Natlan is that there simply is a temporary Pyro Archon to host the tournament to find the perfect vessel, maybe one of the dragons of Natlan that is, perhaps, capable of metamorphosis and took on the role of the Pyro Archon because the nation needs one, and as a dragon it would be older than Nahida. And yes, Shvalanke, I'm looking at you. Anyway, this would also mean that by the end of the Archon quest, Natlan will have had 3 Pyro Archons in total, but personally I'm leaning more toward the 4 Archons theory. Now, some of you may be thinking that there is a third and easier solution. There simply is a new Pyro Archon already, and the tournament doesn't exist to find the perfect vessel for Murata. Well, I don't think that's the case for a specific reason. Capitano has joined the fight. Capitano is one of the Harbingers, and as Arlecchino said, their main role and goal is to bring the Gnosis back to Snezhnaya, so why would Capitano enter the endless ring of war? Is it just because he is a battle junkie? Well, no. If the tournament exists to find the strongest warrior who could inherit Murata's power and knowledge, it would also mean that the winner will receive the Pyronosis as well. We know that Capitano is a formidable fighter, even Child, the actual battle junkie, praises his might, so what would be the easiest way to obtain the Pyronosis if not just to join the fight and win the tournament? On this note, what could the Natlan Archon quest be about? I think we will meet one of the contenders, and we will, as per usual, help them out, teach them how to fight, make them stronger, and see them win the tournament and become the new Pyro Archon. Then, since in Honkai Impact III there's Himeko Murata, and half of her name, Himeko, was used for a character in Star Rail, this contender will inherit the other half of the name, Murata, so she's obviously going to look like both of them. Back to the Archon quest, we've known for a very long time now that vision holders are allogenes, and as such, they can attain godhood and ascend to Celestia, so we know that humans can become gods under certain circumstances, but we've never seen that happening before. The woman we're going to help is probably going to have or receive a Pyrovision, and she will probably defeat Capitano in the finals and win the tournament. This winner will either sacrifice herself or be forced to do so in order to let the Pyro Archon resurrect herself, and because she will be, finally, the perfect vessel Murata was looking for, she will inherit the powers and memories of the original Archon, and with those she will share a secret with the Traveler for a reason only she knows, just like Dainslev said in the Travail video. Now, talking about the Travail video, the Latin text under the Natlan Archon quest reads Surge vir fortis in natam victoriam. This has been translated as Rise, O strong man, and go to your destined victory. But I think this translation didn't fully express what the Latin sentence actually meant. If you didn't know, I studied Latin for 8 years in middle and high school, so my translation would be Rise, strong man, and go to the victory that's rightfully yours by birth. And this translation fits perfectly with what Dainslev says.
The rules of war are woven in the womb.
The woman we are going to help is destined since birth to become the new Pyro Archon. She will be the perfect vessel because she is probably a sort of second coming or second version of the original Pyro Archon. When someone dies, their memories go back to the ley lines and they are reused for a new life. So despite having left a piece of consciousness behind, the memories of the original Pyro Archon have, indeed, gone back to the ley lines, and if I'm right, they were reused to create a new life, the woman we're going to help, the future winner of the tournament, the perfect vessel destined to become the new Pyro Archon. So, going back to the beginning of the video, we still need to answer the main question of today. Where are the people of Natlan? Well, there is a chance that they simply can't leave their nation because they got used to the heat so much that they physically can't live anywhere else because it would be too cold for them. But I would exclude this possibility, both because people go to Natlan on vacation so the heat shouldn't be that strong, but also because it would be an underwhelming explanation. So, since there's apparently nothing preventing them from leaving the nation, the obvious answers could be two. They either don't want to leave, because why not? Natlan could be so great that the people wouldn't even consider leaving. Or they have some kind of moral imposition or duty that prevents them from leaving, which is what I think the case is. The people of Natlan may be divided into two groups. The warriors who give Murata the energy to survive by fighting in the ring, and the audience who give Murata the same kind of energy by believing in the concept of war while they watch the tournament. There is also a chance that every single citizen of Natlan could be called upon and be thrown into the ring at any time, basically forced to fight, so they always have to be ready just in case, which would force them to stay in Natlan. Maybe they also believe that if they were to be chosen but they had left, the Archon wouldn't survive and it would be entirely their fault. This, by the way, would be historically accurate since the Aztecs used to choose which people would be sacrificed for Huitzilopochtli. Sometimes during the festival called Panquetzalitztli, specific people would be dressed as Huitzilopochtli before their sacrifice. Now, a festival with someone who looks just like the god they worship sounds exactly like something that may happen in Natlan, don't you think? Anyway, another possibility is that Murata's resurrection, being such an impossible feat, actually requires the entire population to believe in war. I mean, in Damnirium, the belief in justice was so powerful as to destroy a seat in Celestia, and the people didn't even know what they were doing. What would happen if the people were, instead, aware of this kind of power? Well, I'd say that it would be more than enough to even resurrect the dead. And that's it! I hope you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, and if you're interested in Genshin Impact Theory videos, consider subscribing. My next video is hopefully coming out next week, and let me tell you, it will be the most controversial video I've ever made. You will either completely hate it and cause a cataclysm in the comment section, or you will love it because it will bring a completely new side of the history of Teyvat. There won't be anything in between, basically. Still, despite what is gonna happen in the comment section, I am extremely excited to show this theory to you. I'll start working on the video as soon as I'm done editing this video you just watched, so be ready for it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, over and out.